European horror has always treated the vampire legend with a completely different kind of reverence. Away from the rigid formulas of traditional Hollywood blockbusters, continental filmmakers transformed the classic bloodsucker into an icon of lush surrealism, dreamlike eroticism, and dark Gothic elegance. These are movies where logic frequently takes a back seat to pure sensory experience, wrapping audiences in heavy shadow play, vivid crimson colors, and a haunting, hypnotic atmosphere that feels entirely unmoored from time. Tonight, we're stepping into the mist to explore 10 essential titles defining the distinct world of Euro-vampire cinema. These are the films that lived in the midnight slots of independent theaters, offering a far more transgressive, stylish, and atmospheric look at the immortal myth. From the moody, monochrome landscapes of Italian masterpieces to the sun-bleached psychedelic dreamscapes of the 1970s underground, these stories capture a beautifully macabre corner of film history.
Blood for Dracula, 1974. Directed by Paul Morrissey and produced under the supervision of Andy Warhol, this European co-production strips away the traditional romanticism of vampire folklore to present a bleak, satirical deconstruction of the classic monster narrative. Shot back-to-back in Italy alongside Flesh for Frankenstein to maximize studio resources and set designs, the film completely rejects standard midnight movie aesthetics. Instead, the visual presentation utilizes a bright, sun-bleached art house palette and sweeping, elegant tracking shots through authentic, decaying aristocratic estates, contrasting high art refinement with sudden graphic explosions of practical makeup effects. The plot details the desperate survival measures of an incredibly sickly, physically frail Count Dracula, who is entirely dependent on the blood of pure virgins to sustain his failing body in a rapidly modernizing world. Realizing his options are dwindling at home, the Count travels to a remote Italian villa to secure a marriage with one of a ruined nobleman's 4 daughters, operating under the assumption that a traditional Catholic household will guarantee an uncontaminated food supply. The narrative shifts into a stark political confrontation upon his arrival, as Dracula encounters Mario, the estate's fiercely Marxist handyman who has already begun seducing the daughters, turning the vampire's search for sustenance into a literal class struggle. Udo Kier provides a highly specific, physically demanding performance as the wheelchair-bound Count, utilizing intense physical contortions to emphasize the character's biological decay, while Joe D'Alessandro counters with a raw, naturalistic screen presence. Featuring a distinct cameo by legendary Italian director Vittorio De Sica, the film functions as a pitch-black social commentary. It stands as a landmark of mid-1970s transgressive cinema, trading Gothic tropes for political subversion. Lips of Blood, 1975. A man at a promotional event glimpses a photograph of a mysterious castle and becomes obsessed with recovering a buried childhood memory connected to the ruins. His search leads him to a beautiful young woman he believes he met years ago, a quest that awakens a coven of female vampires and forces him to confront a past his family tried desperately to erase. Directed by Rollin, Lips of Blood is pure dream state vampire cinema, a film that moves with the logic of memory and desire rather than traditional narrative structure. Rollin, a French auteur known for his poetic approach to horror, crafts a love story wrapped in Gothic atmosphere and erotic melancholy. This is vampire cinema at its most romantic and mournful, where death and love are indistinguishable. Jean-Louis Philippe plays Frédéric with genuine vulnerability, portraying obsession not as madness, but as an almost spiritual calling. Annabelle is ethereal as the vampire Jennifer, appearing and disappearing like a half-remembered dream given form. The supporting cast of female vampires moves through nighttime Paris like ghosts, their presence more sad than threatening. Rollin shoots Paris at night with remarkable beauty. Empty streets, ancient cemeteries, and crumbling ruins bathed in blue moonlight. The film has an improvised, almost accidental quality that somehow enhances its atmosphere. The budget was minimal, the locations were often borrowed or stolen, but these limitations force creativity that gives the film its unique texture. There's barely any violence, little traditional horror, just longing, memory, and the ache of trying to return to something lost. Lips of Blood won't satisfy anyone looking for conventional scares, but for those willing to surrender to its melancholic rhythm, it's hypnotic. The Velvet Vampire, 1971. Stephanie Rothman's The Velvet Vampire stands out as a fascinating artifact of the early 70s, offering a subversion of the typical vampire film by focusing on internal power dynamics rather than just bloodlust. When a young couple travels to the Mojave Desert to visit the isolated home of an enigmatic, wealthy woman named Diane LaFanu, they quickly realize that their host is an ancient vampire who has been living in the desert for centuries. It is a slow, methodical study of seduction, where the horror is derived less from fangs and coffins and more from the way the vampire manipulates the couple's existing relationship tensions. What makes this film particularly compelling is the directorial lens of Stephanie Rothman, one of the few women working within the exploitation sphere at the time. She brings a distinctly psychological, almost observational approach to the material, using the vast, empty landscapes of the desert to mirror the protagonist's sense of isolation and disorientation. The film is less interested in traditional monster tropes and more focused on the eroticism of the encounter, playing with themes of bisexuality and the blurring of boundaries between predator and prey. While it lacks the grand Gothic production values of Hammer horror, it makes up for it with a unique sun-drenched aesthetic that feels miles away from the damp castles of European cinema. The pacing is deliberate, allowing the tension to coil slowly before its inevitable tragic conclusion. It is a stylish, thoughtful piece of genre filmmaking that challenges the viewer to look at the vampire mythos through a more complex humanistic prism. For those who appreciate horror that prioritizes character-driven dread and atmosphere, this is a distinct and memorable entry in the decade's vampire canon. Dracula vs. Frankenstein, 1971. A late-night creature feature assembled from the remnants of a completely different movie, this drive-in hybrid stands as one of the most unpredictable cinematic mashups of the early 1970s. The production began in 1969 as an outlaw biker thriller titled The Blood Seekers before producer Sam Sherman and director Al Adamson halted execution, re-edited the existing footage, and shot entirely new segments to cash in on classic horror names. This patchwork assembly creates a split-screen aesthetic where the narrative constantly shifts gears, bouncing between grainy, sun-bleached outdoor footage of motorcycle clubs and hypersaturated neon-tinted laboratory sequences. The plot zeroes in on the eccentric Dr. Durea, the last living descendant of the Frankenstein bloodline, who masquerades as a beachfront amusement park operator while secretly conducting reanimation experiments in a hidden subterranean cavern. The status quo shatters when Count Dracula, portrayed with a distinctive towering afro, arrives at the facility bearing the frozen, excavated body of the original Frankenstein monster. The two villains strike a sinister alliance, trading the creature's muscle for a specialized serum designed to grant the vampire permanent immunity to sunlight. This pact triggers a wave of midnight abductions along the boardwalk, culminating in a prolonged physical clash between the two legendary monsters. The film serves as a historical archive for genre enthusiasts, capturing the final screen appearances of Hollywood veterans J. Carroll Naish and a completely mute Lon Chaney Jr. Adding a layer of genuine horror lineage to the low-budget production, the set design features the original 1931 Kenneth Strickfaden electrical laboratory props, creating a highly specific visual texture. The Vampire Lovers, 1970. In 18th century Styria, the mysterious and beautiful Carmilla enters the lives of the local aristocracy, posing as a survivor of a carriage accident. Beneath her charm lies a centuries-old hunger. As she systematically seduces the young women of the region and drains them of their life force, she leaves behind a trail of withered husks and baffled doctors. When the local authorities finally realize that a supernatural presence is haunting their estates, a desperate hunt ensues to uncover the truth behind the guest who never leaves. Director Roy Ward Baker brings a surprising amount of grace to the material. Despite the studio's clear mandate to include more adult content, Baker keeps the focus on the eerie, nocturnal atmosphere. The film moves with the deliberate pace of a classic ghost story, using the sprawling architecture of the estates to create a sense of inevitable, creeping dread. The practical effects are standard for Hammer at the time: bright red blood, fangs, and theatrical makeup, but they are elevated by the film's commitment to its own dark mythology. The kills are stylized and rhythmic, treated almost like a dance, which underscores the theme that for Carmilla, the act of feeding is fundamentally indistinguishable from the act of loving. The Vampire Lovers is a fascinating, if sometimes messy, artifact. It stands as the template for the lesbian vampire subgenre that would flood European screens in the following decade, while simultaneously serving as a swan song for the high Gothic era of Hammer. For those interested in the evolution of horror's taboos, it is a key document that marks the exact moment the genre decided to stop hiding its desires in the shadows. Count Dracula, 1970. Franco's adaptation attempts rare fidelity to Bram Stoker's novel after decades of films drifting from the source material. Jonathan Harker travels to a castle in Transylvania as a real estate agent and encounters a count who, true to the book, starts as a haggard, white-mustached old man. As the vampire feeds, he grows progressively younger. After Harker escapes, the count moves his operations to Budapest, prompting Van Helsing to arrive and combat the undead threat. Christopher Lee plays Dracula in what he considered the most faithful version of his career. Unlike his Hammer films, where he was often a silent brute, here he is given the Count's actual literary dialogue. Herbert Lom plays Van Helsing with grim authority, while Klaus Kinski provides a haunting, entirely silent performance as Renfield. The international cast brings a unique flavor to the production, even if the dubbing is occasionally hit or miss. Franco shoots on a minimal budget, using Spanish and Italian locations to approximate Eastern Europe. The Gothic atmosphere relies on location shooting in actual castles, giving the film a sense of authentic, crumbling grandeur that elaborate studio sets often lack. The low budget is apparent in the technical limitations and pacing, but Lee's dignified performance and Franco's attempt at literary accuracy make it a fascinating watch. It isn't the definitive version of the story, but it remains one of the few films to prioritize Stoker's original vision over the established Hollywood templates. For fans of Christopher Lee, it is an essential look at the Dracula he always wanted to play. Malenka, 1969. Also released as Fangs of the Living Dead, this Gothic vampire tale marks the horror directorial debut of Spanish filmmaker Armando de Osorio. This European co-production captures the transition between classic 1960s supernatural cinema and the upcoming exploitation boom. The film heavily adopts the visual blueprints popularized by Hammer horror, replacing contemporary realism with a highly stylized environment built around isolated mountaintop fortresses, stone corridors, and a constant layer of heavy studio fog. The camera work employs deliberate, theatrical framing and deep primary color filtration to create a tense landscape where the ancient past completely dominates the modern characters. The narrative follows Sylvia, a young woman who inherits a noble title and journeys to her family's remote ancestral castle, only to find herself integrated into a strange court, managed by her eccentric uncle, Count Walbrook. The tension accelerates as Sylvia discovers that her uncle is the leader of a regional vampire coven who firmly believes she is the exact physical reincarnation of his executed witch ancestor, Malenka. The production is historically notable for its completely divergent distribution cuts. The original Spanish release frames the entire supernatural plotline as an elaborate psychological gaslighting hoax designed to steal Sylvia's wealth, while international distributors demanded a newly shot ending starring Swedish actress Anita Ekberg in a demanding dual role as both the vulnerable modern niece and the vengeful historical witch. The film utilizes high-contrast lighting to accentuate the physical scope of the castle sets. It serves as an essential historical text for genre enthusiasts, showcasing the early stylistic foundations of mood and pacing that Osorio would later deploy for his signature Blind Dead series. The Shiver of the Vampires, 1971. Gene Rollin's The Shiver of the Vampires is perhaps the most quintessentially Rollin film in his entire surrealist horror catalog. Newlyweds driving through the French countryside stumble upon an ancient, decaying castle, the ancestral home of two female cousins who turn out to be vampires. It is a dream logic narrative where the plot serves as little more than a framework for the director's true obsessions. Lingering shots of ethereal, pale figures, erotic longing, and a profound melancholic aesthetic that feels disconnected from the rules of traditional storytelling. The film operates with a distinct hypnotic rhythm. Rather than building tension through jump scares or gore, Rollin uses slow-motion sequences, poetic voiceovers, and a haunting prog rock score to create a hypnotic, waking dream state. It is overtly stylistic, featuring the lush, gothic textures of a fairy tale viewed through a lens of 1970s counterculture decadence. The vampires here aren't monsters to be staked in a frantic climax. They are tragic, beautiful creatures trapped in an eternal, repetitive cycle of desire and decay. For viewers accustomed to the rigid structure of classic Hammer horror, this can be an incredibly disorienting experience. Yet, for those who value atmosphere above all else, it is a visually arresting piece of art house horror. It captures a fleeting, specific moment in European cinema where the boundaries between highbrow surrealism and exploitation were blurred, creating a space for something truly bizarre and beautiful. It is an acquired taste, certainly, but for the right audience, it is an essential piece of atmospheric Gothic cinema. Daughters of Darkness, 1971. Harry Kummel's Daughters of Darkness is vampire cinema as stylish, erotic nightmare set in an off-season Belgian seaside hotel. A newlywed couple arrives and encounters Countess Bathory and her young companion, elegant travelers whose timeless beauty and predatory interest transform the honeymoon into psychosexual horror. As the Countess seduces both husband and wife, their relationship fractures and hidden perversions surface. Delphine Seyrig plays the Countess with aristocratic elegance and barely concealed menace. Her performance, all-knowing smiles and theatrical gestures that suggest centuries of experience manipulating mortals. Danielle Ouimet and John Carlin portray the couple with appropriate naivety that gradually reveals darker currents. Andrea Rao brings otherworldly beauty as the Countess's companion, silent witness and occasional participant. The hotel setting is crucial. A grand Art Deco palace emptied for winter, all gleaming surfaces and vast spaces where the four characters play out their twisted games. Cinematographer Giuseppe Pinori bathes everything in rich colors and elegant compositions, creating visual beauty that contrasts with the emotional and physical violence. The film's approach to vampirism is ambiguous. Are they supernatural creatures or simply ageless predators who've perfected their hunting? Kummel blends vampire mythology with psychosexual exploration, treating bloodlust and desire as inseparable. The violence, when it erupts, is sudden and shocking against the film's measured elegance. The Countess represents both liberating transgression and predatory corruption, offering freedom that comes with terrible cost. Daughters of Darkness remains one of the most stylish vampire films ever made, prioritizing atmosphere and eroticism over traditional horror mechanics. It's European art cinema, using vampire mythology to explore power, desire, and the thin line between seduction and destruction. Vampyros Lesbos, 1971. If you have ever wondered what a fever dream fueled by European psychedelia and pulp fiction would look like, Vampyros Lesbos is your answer. Directed by the prolific Jesus Franco, this film is far less interested in traditional narrative coherence than it is in creating a hypnotic, surrealist atmosphere. The story, a lawyer visits an island to settle an estate, only to be seduced by a centuries-old vampire countess, is merely a thin coat of paint on a canvas dominated by hypnotic camera movements, vibrant, saturated colors, and a soundtrack that is essentially a jazz-infused prog rock cult classic. What makes this film endure as a genre artifact is its complete commitment to aesthetic over logic. Franco creates a world where time seems to stand still, punctuated by erotic encounters and dreamlike sequences that are intentionally disjointed. It is unabashedly experimental. yet it remains one of the most accessible entry points into Franco's massive, wildly uneven filmography. It captures the liberated spirit of early 70s European cinema, where taboos were being shattered in favor of exploring the intersection of desire, decay, and the supernatural. It is easy to dismiss this film as mere exploitation, but to do so ignores the genuine craft in its visual composition and its ability to construct a mood that is genuinely unique. It is a film of textures, sounds, and lingering gazes, designed to pull the viewer into a trance rather than keep them on the edge of their seat. For those who appreciate horror that leans into the avant-garde or the art house side of the 1970s sex horror boom, Vampyros Lesbos is essential viewing, a stylistic monolith that is equal parts mesmerizing and deeply weird.
Thanks for watching. If you have your own memories of these films or a hidden gem we missed, let us know in the comments below. We're building this collection together, one film at a time. And remember, always be kind and rewind, because every movie is somebody's favorite.